Man, we have just got to get our technical mastery down. Okay, so we were talking about the ayahuasca vision and the reincarnation and what it showed me about how what archangels really are and all of that. So there was this like nothingness in the middle that when it became conscious, it sort of lit up with energy, and it emanated in, well, first it divided and then it divided again, and but at any rate, the way you can think about this is that there was a as it emanated in like 12 directions, and so you could think of that as the zodiac or the 12 disciples around Christ. And so she told me, this right here is your archetype of consciousness, the frequency that you exist on. And that is why you have these proclivities and this desire to sort of illuminate like some kind of Prometheus or, something along those lines, that type of archetypal deal. And so another thing that I noticed is that all of these people that seem to be that same archetype, we all have the same sort of life stories, a very no father figure or a very bad relationship with it, a very difficult relationship with the mother figure, even down to like some really crazy details. And I think that this idea of reincarnation could also be that there's sort of just these rays of consciousness, and it sort of recycles. And so it may not be literally the case that I lived this life as this person, but we are made of the same soul stuff. And so so many details in the lives of people that share these archetypal relationships have all these incredible similarities. And so that's just when I was laying in bed last night contemplating all of this, it just occurred to me that I just saw it as almost like this bucket, like, and that would be our meat suit, I guess, like dumping into this current of different, it's like spectrums of light. And there are potentials created all along that allow or give rise to these variations of consciousness. So let's see if we have anything else. I did notice. There was another question in the chat here about what I think all of this fear is doing to the world, the effect that it has, and everything creates its opposite. So as some people are becoming more fearful and the chaos is overwhelming, others are becoming more empowered and more courageous. I know I am. I'm more excited about the work that I am doing, and whatever contribution, big or small, that I'm able to make to conscious or evolution. All these developments in science, I mean, things that I have believed since I was a child, to have these astrophysicists now saying, like, well, it kind of looks like the universe is a bunch of this neural networks, and also, in physics, as I'm always saying, it's not as absolute as a lot of like the pop culture teachers would have you believe. The double slit experiment, for example, is not proof that consciousness causes the probability wave to collapse in one way or another. It just isn't. So that sort of thing, you have to be skeptical and really think these things through, because, like I'm always saying, you got to be really wary of even well-intentioned people selling people ideas that reflect things that they want to hear. It's very, very easy to do. And it's also very easy for us to buy into these things if we are predisposed to that particular brand of wish demon, right? So, um, but along the same lines, another experiment was devised recently to take the slit experiment a step further, and they used experienced meditators that were attempting to influence the outcome of the slit experiment, and also they used a control group that were not experienced meditators, and they determined that not only do the expectations of the observer influence the outcome of the experiment, but that people who are proficient, experienced meditators are better at it. And the experiment was reviewed, peer-reviewed, and repeated. Harvard gave it a Sigma 5 rating. So what I'm getting at here is that uh, it, the overall arc of the trajectory of the development of this concept of the universe as somehow fundamentally made of consciousness um, the evidence for it is increasing and increasing and increasing, and it's, to me, it's extremely obvious. And um, it's as far as the fear goes, I guess what bothers me the most is that even though we do have uh, a sort of new metaphysical model that I think has a potential to really revolutionize cultures and people, and it holds so much potential. There is a tremendous amount of resistance. There is a lot of religious dogma, and there is serious indoctrination politically and religiously that is going to be very, 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 very difficult to penetrate. Um, Although I think that in terms of offering hope, I can also offer that we know there are a number of elements to this, from entrainment. We're all oscillating cycles entrain. Um, all pulses, human hearts do it, brain waves do it, electromagnetic pulses do it, anything that pulses does it. Clocks even do it. Take a really long time for a clock that was 5 minutes away from another mechanical clock for them to like totally synchronize, but eventually it would happen. So and also entanglement, we know that energy is responding to all the other energy instantaneously, and so we do have good sound reason to believe that we can have an influence on the other uh, um, minds that are stuck. And another interesting element to this is that not only do we know that brain waves will entrain, we know that the law of entrainment says that lower cycles entrain to higher cycles. And so, if it is a true fact that this is literally a higher oscillation, these higher forms of consciousness, um, then the lower ones will entrain with the higher. And when one adept, one aspirant, one spiritual seeker, however you want to term it, elevates their consciousness, the likelihood is that it pulls the rest of humanity along with it. And so um, I would say that the effect of the fear and the chaos is to catalyze courage and order. And um, it's all just a necessary part of the process. I mean, it's got to crash and burn, but when it fans the flames, the chaotic flames of combustion with its wings, it is compelling the chaos to order by force of its will. And um, that metaphor is universally applicable to any um, transformative cycle and the processes that are going to be engaged. All right, so Q&A, guys. There are 4 people. I've been talking for an hour and 12 minutes. You guys, is there anything else anyone would like to ask? Because I'm all ears. Okay, so in that case, in closing, I just, the main bullet point that I'm trying to get across with all this is that the importance of the entheogenic experiences and combining this with meditation and yoga, because if you cannot direct the mind, this is one of the ways that psychedelics got themselves a bad reputation in the first place. If you're just like Terence McKenna said, psychedelics don't work on stupid people, I think is how he put it. If you do not direct the neuronal growth, just exploding a bunch of neuropathways, I don't think it'll be random. I think the mind has its own internal and subconscious mechanisms to direct that process. But when it suddenly explodes and you have no intention, you have no purpose, now you're just randomly wiring shit, and that is how we get acid casualties. So it is important to make sure that you know why you're doing it. And I just want to add that little caveat there. These effects of these compounds are extraordinary and amazing, but they are not automatic. But the fact of the matter appears to be that the same fundamental force that is constraining gases to create nebulae and stars to make spiral galaxies is etching our memories and thoughts and whatever we learn and experience into the gray matter in our brain. It is the same process. It is the same force. So our capacity to forge our own consciousness in accordance with our highest concept of self, right? We have never been more able, and it has never been more important. Our responsibility to ourselves and the world at large has never been greater. And you guys, Chinese character for a crisis is the character for opportunity combined with that of danger. And this is the this is the curse of being in 3D, or the blessing that these antinomical forces, I guess it is a word, they're always present. They're always interacting, and that is what gives rise to our potential. And so I am choosing to focus on the fact that in some ways we are more empowered than any of our ancestors ever could have dreamed. Our access to technology, to information, to the techniques of transcendence and transformation have never been anything close to what they are. And the fact that there are more threats to our continued existence, more elements or influences that development, it's just part of the equation. Yeah, AB, I mean, that's the thing, I mean, order out of chaos. We are working within a framework. Some of the parameters are dictated by us and some of them are dictated to us. For example, I'm always talking about how spiritual people tend to reject the material and money. And since that is one of those parameters of this world that is dictated to us, if spiritual people reject power and money, which is power relative to our current set of circumstances, it's not going to be spiritual people that are in power. So this is a beautiful illustration, I guess, of the uniqueness of our circumstances, because we have to create a new breed, a type of human that knows that living for the collective is actually in the interest of the individual. The Grateful Dead's business model proved this eloquently, and it was true that it was slower, that they, were driving BMWs instead of Lamborghinis until the 90s or whatever, because they paid the roadies $250,000 a year instead of $9 an hour like Aerosmith at the time. But ultimately, they became the most successful touring act in the world ever without any radio support until 1987 or 87, I think. And they allowed the janitor to have equal say at meetings. So he could veto, and this actually happened, a signing with a record contract, a record company. And also, there's a great book. I've recommended this before. Hopefully, it's available at my Amazon store. If not, I'll find it, stick it in there. But it's called Everything I Know About Business I Learned from the Grateful Dead. And the guy talks about how Apple and Microsoft and all of these giant corporations actually integrated a lot of the Grateful Dead business model into their structure, and that's part of the reason why they were super successful. And the fundamental gestalt of it is that the collective is the organism, not the individual component. It's like if you put all of your energy into one cell, you know what I mean? Like that's just not the best thing. And so that's another I can't believe I missed this earlier, but this concept of a conscious universe, and that if you align yourself with order, which is you could also say with life or experience or the creative impulse, that the universe will support you, and that you really actually don't have to worry about anything, that you still have to do stuff, but you will find that the way that your consciousness is engaged with the fundamental mechanisms of the universe, it will facilitate your fulfillment of your purpose, because that's why you're here, especially if it's in accordance with the greater will. When your individual purpose is aligned with the universal mind, then you find that you have a support that will surprise and delight you. You will leap off of a cliff expecting to land into an abyss of rocks, and there is a featherbed instead. And so this transformation in perspective, it's wise to take it slowly. You don't want to go too far too fast with this thing and find yourself believing that your magic can do more for you than it can, and overestimating and getting yourself hurt. But taking these small steps to experience these things without incurring a lot of risk is definitely within the realm of possibility for anyone. And as you experience these things little by little, the old dominator culture, fear-based matrix prison reality is dissolved, and without that perception that it's every man for himself, that the universe is cold and ambivalent, it's not really that hard to imagine that we could refocus the orientation of that ontology that promotes that sort of self-centered existence. Going through chaos, these weird. No, I don't. Well, sort of. not evil forces. There are no evil forces. In my outlook, chaos, evil is the product of entropy. It is the space between order that facilitates this. And so I often talk about how, when I was younger and I started hearing about the Illuminati, I started doing some research and I discovered that you could actually read Adam Weisshaupt papers, right? That they were seized from his sock drawer, so it's not like it was propaganda. And I started reading it, and it was like, well, we need to get rid of religion and replace it with illumination, which can actually be taught. That's what Masonic lodges are supposed to be for. We need to get rid of borders in order to get rid of nationalism so that we don't have a war anymore. And I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't sound evil or oppressive at all. It seems more like the people in power are pulling some Orwellian mindfuck and trying to convince people that they shouldn't investigate this stuff because it is the key to their liberation. And so I don't necessarily think that the idea behind the New World Order has anything to do with enslavement or that it's necessarily bad. And the overwhelming actual evidence being, for example, the writings of Adam Weishaupt. And come on, I say this all the time, but does the Illuminati really sound like a group that wants to make people ignorant? This is just stupid. If you're looking for an evil, secretive group that seeks to enslave and oppress and keep mankind in ignorance, look at the Christian right wing, the family. It's the opposite of what the Illuminati were. The Illuminati were just adept initiates that were trying to find a way to bring illumination to mankind and get rid of religion and borders and make the world a better place. So I don't I don't think that chaos comes from evil forces. It's interesting too. I mean, the chaos is kind of what protects us, I think, from the absolute strictures and oppression that they're attempting to put into place. I know that in a lot of the pop culture spiritual teachings, chaos is associated with evil. But I hate to tell you this: without chaos, you would have no free will. You would be a total automaton. And if that's good to you, then our perceptions of good and evil are completely different. So I think that these kind of moral judgments about necessary conditions of existence are a bit ridiculous, and they're not applicable. All I'm saying about order and chaos is that in order to restructure anything, there has to be some kind of space, and that space is one manifestation of chaos, or it is part of what facilitates the chaos, which in this context only means the absence of order. So if you have such a rigidly structured system that there is no space for movement, there's no possibility of restructuring. And so the breaking down in the system that we're seeing, one of the things I'm noticing is that the older generation, their entire indoctrinated political and religious structures are so threatened right now that, I mean, I watch these, I feel bad for them, I really do, because they really believe that all of this shit that they have been programmed to cling to is good, that they are just losing their minds. And another thing that I'm noticing is that younger people, like, mid-20s and below, don't even bother to engage about politics, about religion, about any of this shit. And people think it's apathy and that they don't care. And, the older generation is like, derp, 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 you guys are fucking everything up. And it's like, no, man, they're just not wasting their energy. They know that the political system is so entirely, absolutely, hopelessly corrupted that there is no point in voting for a Republican or a Democrat. I mean, you guys, look what's happened since Biden got into office, right? He's appointed Republicans and Democrats that vote Republican against the other Democrats more often than not. And before he was elected, I said, this guy's a right-wing Republican in disguise. Trump sucks, sure, but this guy, are you kidding me? We're gonna fight racism with this asshole that, like, he's still, even during his campaign, he couldn't stop saying racist shit because he's so fundamentally racist. He doesn't even know when he's saying racist things. I mean, he's like got all these African American kids crawling all over him, and he compares them to cockroaches. I mean, this was like 6 or 7 months ago. It's completely. I mean, you have to be totally brain dead to believe it at this point. And I'm sorry if you do. Yes, I'm calling you brain dead because you need to wake the fuck up. You're gonna kill us all. Like, seriously, stop believing in any. If you belong to a religion or a political party, you're not awake. Period. Period. Just stop it. Stop identifying with prepackaged systems. Like, they're just there to fucking enslave your mind, right? I mean, it's totally true. But the big one that really got me in the last week or something was that all these Republicans are like, oh, the left is going to destroy us, and now that Biden is, it's like, dude, you guys won either way in this election. Are you kidding me? Biden said we're going to move away from oil. You know who he put in charge of the climate commission or whatever, the global warming? This guy that takes more money from big oil and big energy than any other politician in the United States. This is a week. This guy's not even inaugurated, and he's already doing the exact opposite of what he campaigned on, which is exactly what the Democrats hate the Republicans for doing. The exact shit that he's doing. He also said he was going to forgive all the student debt. He went back on it right away. They said they were going to federally legalize marijuana. Now they're saying they're not. I mean, everything that got him elected, he has gone back on, and it's only been like, what, a week or some shit? So, I hate politics, you guys. I really don't want to talk about it, but we have to. And it's because that's the first, this is something I missed. I said I was going to talk about in the description too. In my experience, the first stage of awakening is the political. First, you realize that it's completely, like Frank Zappa said, politics is the entertainment division of the military-industrial complex. And it's absolutely true. Personal self-government responsibility. And so this is the thing about the gnosis that I'm always kind of like, I don't want to say harping on, but there are several things that give it its fundamental value. It's hard to pick one, right? But what's up, Big C248? Almost always I see you, and thank you, man. What was I saying though? Okay, people, and by the way, you guys, some people get confused about this. When I talk about gnosis, I'm not talking about it in a Christian context. We are reappropriating a term that just means knowledge because it has come to imply that it is possible for people to access direct knowledge without an intermediary like a church or a preacher or a book or whatever. This is an individually centered organic process of transformation, of coming to greater levels of knowledge, and it's got nothing to do with the original Gnostics, who actually were more like Luciferians than Christians. It's largely, they didn't really want to get burned alive, so they would kind of talk about it in that way. And I think there's a lot of evidence that they also understood the universal mind was really the thing. Sophia is just Latin or Greek for wisdom, and the demiurgos is only matter, and the tetragrammaton, the four-letter name of God of the Jews, right? This is why you're not supposed to say four-letter words, because if you accidentally pronounce it, you blow the word up. The fifth element, which is symbolized in Hebrew by the letter shin, if you drop it into the middle of the tetragrammaton, it becomes the pentagrammaton. So now it's a five-letter word, and if you say it, it's Yehoshua, which is Savior. So Christ, in the Gnostic context, is that which animates. It's the consciousness that it's not a person. None of these things are to be taken literally. The people that created the Garden of Eden myth, that as well. But I'm getting off track here. Point is, people that have had these experiences of transcendental consciousness, right, do not need to be governed, and they won't tolerate it, right? Like, I'll answer to fucking nobody. The only laws that I can make any acknowledgement of are ethical laws. Like, I cannot disrupt your will, right? You are only me also. So this is another thing. When you've had that transcendental experience where it's not like you're saying, oh, we are one because you've read that in the Vedantas or in the scriptures of the Buddha or whatever. You have actually left your fucking body on ayahuasca and been part of the whole collective of nature, thinking from the perspective of all the birds and trees and people. And, when you've actually had that experience, it has an effect on you that cannot be escaped. This is not a matter of clumsily trying to adhere to some doctrinal nonsense that was created by some patriarchal committee that is seeking to profit and control. This is an organic transformational process that you cannot, you're not trying to adhere to anything. It is something that is actually happening within you. And so what happens is, these people are not going to steal. They're not going to kill. And I'm not saying it's totally 100% assured, but the success rate of the gnosis in this sense is really, really high, right? I mean, the transcendental experience, however you want to think about it, right? This is why they have treated the people that promote these things as enemies. There are a couple of reasons. For psychedelics, for example, people are under the misconception that back in the day when they had the researchers do the research, that they said, oh no, this is going to make people insane. And no, that's not what the researchers said. They said we can treat all of these neurological problems with one dose. And Big Pharma said, send cops, shut them the fuck down now. That's what really happened. And so if you think about the responsibility that the people that made those decisions in interest of their own profits and their own ability to control, forget about oppressing spiritual development and the kind of anarchistic proclivities of the illuminated, right? Forget about that. Just the medical, the fact that they have known that they could rewrite addictive programs, that they could erase PTSD, that they could dispel depression in single doses of people, and we had actually applied this knowledge and technology when it was discovered, what would the world look like right now? What would it look like? So I really think that we need to have the courage to really admit to ourselves that these people have fucked us, and they have done it with full consciousness and knowledge. It is not what people think. It is not bumbling, out of touch old people with a slow, misguided bureaucracy that they're struggling to control. It is not that. It is not that. One of the biggest problems with the unconscious person is that they do not recognize their projections. And one of those projections is that, and this sounds extremely condescending, I don't intend it that way, but sometimes you just have to describe things as they are, right? People bring the phenomenology that they're observing down to the level of comprehension that they're capable of. So when you have much more sophisticated entities like the intelligence community in the United States government, the propaganda machines, people are going to perceive it in a way that they don't have to acknowledge that there are these minds that are that much more sophisticated that they're able to just play them and manipulate them so easily and effortlessly. And I mean, it has gotten to the point where the herd conformity is reinforced and enforced by the herd to the extent that they will attack those of us that attempt to tell them the truth. It is absolutely true. They will delete you from their Facebook, and usually they will respond with tremendous anger, great vengeance and furious anger. Those who would attempt to liberate and illuminate thy brothers. It's nuts, man. It is really nuts. I mean, they have really engineered a mass of unthinking, heavily indoctrinated, deeply programmed lunatics, especially in like the United States and the Middle East. Europeans don't have it so bad. I don't know what's up with that. Why they mostly, just allowed the Dutch and the French and the British to sort of think for themselves, but I don't know. Strawberry in the Sky, I wouldn't think of it as sobriety. I don't think that there's any reason to, unless you are predisposed to mental illness, there's no reason to completely discontinue use of psychoactive plants. This is not a violation of sobriety, if that is your concern. But microdosing at sub-threshold doses definitely will help you to bring those filters down. Oh, here's some shit for you guys. So earlier I was talking about how the astrophysicists have observed the galaxies organizing themselves according to the same protocol that neuronal structures do. Okay, and so in case you're just tuning in, what I was relating that to is like my own visions and observations, I think, in physics of how consciousness is the fundamental fabric of existence. And so this same force that, I mean, as I said, when you're directing when you're thinking, experiencing, learning, there are physical structural changes in the brain that are directed by consciousness. Matter is taking direction from consciousness. This is like literally the definition of magic, causing change to occur in conformity with will. So, by the way, anyone that ever tells you that magic isn't real, just wave at them. And if they say, well, it doesn't really count because your nervous system is connected to what? Where's the driver? They have looked everywhere and the consciousness is nowhere. So what are they talking about? Connected to what? What is it? So where I'm going with this, though, it gets better. We have seen evidence now. And again, if you guys click the link on my blog, oh, I haven't published it yet. So anyways, you should be following that blog anyway. So follow the blog, and then when it is published, you'll see it. But there's links to this article. And so the gist of it is that we are observing that the same consciousness that directs the formation of neural pathways is organizing galaxies. And so these entheogenic substances are, according to some theories like Dennis McKenna, bringing down filters in the nervous system that normally filter out, like we only perceive 1% of the full spectrum of light. And then all of the energies and whatever else is there that we're not perceiving. I mean, dark matter, I don't think is perceptible, and it's like 90% of the universe or whatever. So when we bring these filters down, we are integrating our microcosm with the greater mind. It's like there's a reducing valve in our neurobiological mechanisms that psychedelics turn off, which is to say that it increases the flow of the connectivity between the available current of consciousness and what we normally process, which is limited as evolutionary necessity, so that we're not overwhelmed by incoming signals. We are telepathic. I can assure you of that, 100 fucking percent. There's no doubt that telepathy is a real thing. Precognition happens to me all the time. I don't have control over it. I think that this is another one of those things where people get themselves into trouble, particularly because, in traditions like shamanism, although not all shamans had teachers, that's definitely a misconception that is kind of growing out of the ayahuasca industry. But certainly, mystery school adepts, there was always someone there that could kind of guide you and put you in check and help to get your ego under control, because ego inflation is one of the great dangers of the early part of the process of illumination. When we have these precognitions and telepathic experiences and whatnot, it's very easy to start mistaking our wishes and desires and thoughts, and to become deluded and lose the ability to distinguish between legitimate precognitions and telepathy. And so another reason why meditation and all this is so important. But that's also the reason for the development of the filters, because if we were always trying to deal with the incoming signals from other minds and even plants and minerals, maybe, it's very difficult to distinguish between that stuff and our own thoughts. I feel like there was something else that I needed to answer over here. But yeah, the personal self-government and responsibility, that's where this is all going. And they know that. They know that. It does confuse me as a person that has studied Freemasonry and the mystery schools, and I've been involved with Scottish Rite Lodge, and and also the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Stella Matutina, and these other sort of pseudo-Masonic fraternities. I know that they are people that understand what illuminated consciousness is for, what it does, and that it leads to this autonomy and independence. And I know that regardless of the popular conception that Freemasons, for example, are all bad and seeking to control everyone, I know from personal experience that that's definitely not true. But then it is hard to reconcile that knowledge with what we actually see from the power structures, the governments, and the elite. So, but yeah, strawberry. I would recommend. I mean, I don't know how long it's been. If you have access to shaman wherever you are, or a reputable guide, maybe to dip your toes back into that. But it's I don't even like to see that reference to sobriety in reference to psychedelics, because we this idea that drugs, that anything that alters your consciousness is a drug. I mean, it's sort of true, but that means that food and sex and, I mean, I used to I got in trouble when I was much younger, and I even went with one of my girlfriends that had gotten into trouble to these AA and NA meetings. And these guys are sitting around just like chain smoking cigarettes and pounding caffeine and saying any addictive behavior will trigger you to go back out and do all these drugs again. And then they'd say, well, if you work it, it works. And it's like, well, this is my 7th time out of prison and my 14th relapse and shit. And it's like, wait, what the fuck are you guys talking about? And on top of all that, and this is a true fact, the founders of AA were Masons. And not only that, but there was a 13th step that they ultimately, because LSD was banned, they decided to take it out. But LSD was supposed to be your graduation in NA and AA. So, okay, well, the sober sitter thing with ayahuasca, it's always difficult for me to answer these kind of questions, because there are so many different tribes with different protocols and different opinions about how things need to be done. And the person that taught me is trained in the Shuar way, and in the Shuar way, you don't have anyone that has not had at least a small amount of medicine anywhere near the circle, at least not in the circle. So I I don't know that that is something that needs to be adhered to absolutely, because I am sure that there are other traditions that that's not the case. Although I can kind of understand why it would be that that would be prohibited. I know that our consciousness is constantly connected, and that some disruption of the very subtle transmission of information and the experience, um, I can see how it would be disrupted by the presence of a mind that wasn't in that space. Um, Also, if you don't have access, this is a really tough thing, because I've I know that the ayahuasca experience is essential to the transformation. There's a reason why it is coming up out of the jungle and finding its way into all the major cities all over the planet. I mean, there are people drinking in India now, China, all over the planet, and there is a reason for that. Pachamama told me that I will help those that will help me, and so this transformative experience, like I've been saying, man, it's one thing to have an intuition. It's one thing to read spiritual books, even by the greatest masters. It is entirely different to actually experience the transcendental, um, which is something that you cannot get from those books. And meditation, sometimes people get me wrong. I don't ever really put it down, but the fact is, you get anywhere. Um, at least in terms of actually accessing these transcendental places. And in the case of ayahuasca, this is my connection. Okay, it's pretty much assured. And so I have seen things that challenge even my relatively open ontological disposition, I guess. For example, I've seen things that looked like exorcisms, and I still don't really believe in literal demons or evil spirits. But uh, another way to think about it, I guess, is that some serious, severe trauma had bubbled up into this person's consciousness. And, since then I've learned to do it myself. But when the song of the shaman becomes, it reaches a certain intensity, it triggers anything that anyone in the circle, if the good shaman is clinging to. And suddenly, if there's someone that's got something really, really bad that just got to be processed, they might start to scream bloody murder. And as soon as the water, the flower water, and the leaf shaker, as soon as it hits them, the negative energy is dispelled. They will usually vomit and vomit and vomit and vomit and vomit and vomit, and it happens like that. San Pedro is a different story. It's much, much more difficult to pull someone back from going over the edge with San Pedro, and also because of the long duration of the experience, it can take a really, really long time, which man, that can be rough. But what I'm getting at is that I feel like there are things that can go wrong with ayahuasca, that without a shaman, no one's going to be able to help you. So if you have a sober sitter um, that is not an ayahuasquero, and an ayahuasquero is not, if you guys, one of the ways to detect a fake shaman, if they don't drink the medicine and just serve it to everyone and they call themselves a shaman, they are wrong. That just doesn't work. It's not real. I'm not saying that they're necessarily bad people, but they're certainly not shaman. That's no shaman ever in any tradition. If anything, they will drink the medicine and you will drink nothing. That happens for sure, because they can see the energetic body and the grids, and they can see where there are disruptions, and they can see where there are things that shouldn't be the way that they are, and hopefully figure out some way to address these energetic aberrations. Shamans that don't drink with people, they're just bunk, straight up bunk, bunk, bunk. So I'm sorry if I didn't answer that very well. The conundrum for me is that I don't want to deny people or suggest to people that they should preclude themselves from these experiences because they don't have access to shaman. But at the same time, I hate to say, no, it's fine, because I have observed situations where I don't really know what would have happened if there wasn't someone there that legitimately knows how to work with this medicine. Well, I would love to go to Sweden. I'll come and facilitate some if they open travel back up. So yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. That's just a very difficult question to answer. Overall, I would say that it's probably okay if you don't have a choice. And yes, I would have what I would suggest is to have someone present to the extent that if they start screaming, or you start, or whoever takes the medicine starts like really losing it, there's someone around, but maybe they just shouldn't hover, on you from time to time. And I think that if it's someone that is willing to invest this time, they're probably willing to take at least a little bit of time to do a little bit of research and see what they can do, even as an untrained person, in order to act as a facilitator in some facility. So a couple of things you can definitely do. Tobacco, of course, I would not use a commercial brand, but if you have access to whole leaf, particularly mapacho, but I realize like in a place like Sweden, that's probably very difficult to get. But if you can get some whole tobacco leaf, organic, and fill a container, with just a little bit more water than there is tobacco, heat it for maybe 5 minutes or 7 minutes or something, and let it sit until it cools, maybe even overnight, so it's nice and strong. And then you make a cup with your hand, pour a little bit in, and before you drink, and maybe a few hours in, or if you get into trouble, you inhale it through the nose. And tobacco is taken to focus the mind, and it definitely works. So there are things that you can do as just an individual that you can be aware of that would help. Another thing you can do is make your own flower water. Just take some Everclear, some 90 proof, or not 90 proof, would it be like 180 proof or whatever, 200 proof, whatever, really, really strong alcohol, and soak it with various flowers. And citrus is really important. It tends to just snap you right out. Of course, I realize you're not going to have access to the same flowers that we would have here, but I think lavender, citrus, chamomile is calming. Just depending on your availability, do take into consideration what the plants, what their function is in aromatherapy or as an herbal supplement when you place them into the water. And so that having some of that water handy. And I think that any person can function to some degree as a shaman and have some and be efficacious to some degree, right? So if your intention is to dispel confusion and negative energy, even a person that is not a shaman, if they take this water into their mouth and focus on their calming their own energy and blowing it away from the person that is struggling, it's probably still going to have some effect. So I guess this is a very, very long-winded way of saying that with some even YouTube research and the right people, you can probably facilitate and just or safely ingest ayahuasca if you really don't have an experienced guide. But of course, start at a very low to moderate dose, because no matter what anyone has told you, if you take a strong dose of ayahuasca, nothing is going to prepare you for what actually happens. It's, I mean, I've seen some crazy shit in my life, and I don't mean with psychedelics. I'm talking about just synchronicities on a level that just can't happen. And you know, I mean, once I was twice I was telling people that there were UFOs that, you know, when I was talking about them, sometimes they would appear, and twice the exactly as I described them. You know, I mean, so much. And I'd smoked DMT. I've had a lot of powerful psychedelic experiences, and I was still like the first couple of ayahuasca experiences, like white knuckled and like, you know, wanting to ask for charcoal or something to turn it off at times because it just, you know, it got to be almost too much for me. And I can I couldn't believe it, you know, that I was actually starting to feel like whoa, maybe I've really done it this time. Shouldn't have done this. Um, I got over it, of course, but. Well, if it's a person that has a lot of experience, it's still not necessarily. I mean, you know, I think it would be, you know, if this is an experienced psychonaut, it's also going to depend on whether the person consuming it is an experienced psychonaut. That's worth a lot. Um, but again, I think when it comes to ayahuasca, it's it's like you know, you mean a psychonaut that's had a lot of LSD, because that's like comparing LSD to Advil, with the ayahuasca being the LSD. So um, yeah, I would imagine it would help, but it would be definitely advisable that it was a person that is not just a psychonaut, but that had a lot of experience, at least with DMT, um, and preferably with ayahuasca. Because if they have had ayahuasca, then they've probably at least been sitting in circles and have some idea of what they can do to maintain the energetic homeostasis in the space. Um, So I have a dinner appointment in an hour in town, and I have to walk. Um, I guess there's a bike. So does anyone else have any more questions? I have a few more minutes. Let's see if I missed anything. Um, I'm not sure what you mean about dark crystals or downward triangle. I mean, there's the blue descending triangle and the red ascending triangle that's mentioned in the Western occult mystery tradition and the Book of Lies. Um, if you mean by dark crystals, a crystal that has some sort of like negative. Okay, yeah, I don't. I have no idea what that's about. Um, Thank you, man. I do feel like I missed something though. Video with Damon Eccles or Scott Turner. Well, what do you mean it opened the doors to the spiritual realm permanently through too many ceremonies? Is there any such thing? Isn't that what you were trying to do? Um, if you bring these filters down to the point where your experience of life is unmanageable and overwhelming, then sure, it's too much. But for me, the increase in synchronistic experiences and precognition and experiences of telepathy and just general connectiveness and an ability to manifest and um, become more of an empowered co-creator in my existence from having opened those doorways. Um, I wouldn't think of that as too many ceremonies. That's the objective. I think that one of the big mistakes that a lot of people make with psychedelics, and one of the things that scares people a lot, is that they're thinking that they're going to drink ayahuasca and then go back to their regular state of consciousness, um, maybe with some resolved traumas or something. And that might be the case if you just drink one or two cups and then never do it again. But um, the reality, I think, is that you are causing rapid brain change. You have thousands of times as many neuroconnectors after one LSD trip. Psilocybin is regenerating damaged, shriveled brain cells that may have been gone since you were a child, and now you can remember your past lives. Uh, you are burning down filters that screen out a lot of what is actually present in the universe, but they don't go back up all the way. they go up part of the way, but that's the point. We're not trying to temporarily stick our head into another realm and then close it back up again. That's not going to happen. The whole point is to engineer our perceptive apparatus in such a way that we're having a more holistic experience of the totality of creation, of the perceptions that are actually available to us, and having a much less limited experience of reality. Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Gills beat his back. Go one. I was actually wondering about you. I felt like I hadn't seen you in one of these for a while. Maybe I just haven't done one in a while. But I don't know which HPPD is. But synchronicity should happen when you're sober. This is not a hallucination. Like I said earlier today, when I was doing research for the reincarnation video, and I was trying to remember the details, which I never even talked about, I don't think, of these cases where a person remembered having been murdered and they knew who killed them, and it was all true, and so I found the video, or a video, and I was writing that the universe had revealed all of this stuff about my past life through synchronicities, and I hear, "Tell us your story now, Harley," and that's my name, right? And I'm like, who the hell? It took me a second to realize it had come from I'm not high. You know what I mean? That was 2 hours ago. The stories that I have about the hallucinogenic persistent disorder, that's not what that is. That is a medical fucking fallacy. That is what happens when deterministic, material-based people, what would I call that? It's like material determinism persistent disorder, where they're trying to put shit that they don't have explanation for into a box. The trails that you see, the patterns that I see them at nighttime forever. They're not hallucinations. They're just manifestations of energy of some kind that is always present. And I think one of the reasons we know this is that, like, for example, when you close your eyes with LSD, there are these very specific sort of rainbow-hued patterns. The colors are always in the same order. Everyone sees them exactly the same way. There's something that's actually there, That's what I think, anyways. And so this hallucinogenic persistent disorder, I think what it actually means is that you have expanded your consciousness. You're perceiving more of what is actually there. And so people are disturbed because they think, oh no, I broke my brain and now I'm still seeing these patterns. And no, those are just part of the invisible, what's normally invisible to us, that these normally imperceptible constituent parts of our universe. Yeah, I absolutely no loss salon. I want to brew my own ayahuasca and microdose it. That's definitely highly advisable. The benefits are many, but one of the things that is the most promising that has been observed in vitro and in I can't remember the other word at the moment, basically in cells in a petri dish and in situ. In a living brain is the neurogenesis and the regeneration of damaged brain cells. But on top of that, I think that the Harmala alkaloids that are found in Syrian rue and in the vine, they were originally called telepamine or telepathine when they were discovered, because the anthropological record and even in the writings of an explorer, what was his name, Sir Walter Raleigh, there were all of these stories of shaman knowing things that they couldn't know and having precognitions and demonstrating remote viewing. They've never left the jungle, but they know what the Eiffel Tower is and where it is, and the pyramids and shit. So I think that, oh, and also in clinical studies in Masters in Houston, 1963, 66, they published a book called The Varieties of Psychedelic Experience, where they did incontrovertibly, solid experiments that proved that ayahuasca definitely induced telepathy. So I think that your capacity for receiving these normally filtered signals from consciousness is definitely increased. The thing is this: if you are going to accelerate your evolution, you also have to increase your practices that um, develop your discipline and willpower. The most complete set of talents and virtues is totally useless in the absence of willpower and discipline. If you do not have the capacity to channel greater amounts of energy, you're just going to blow a fuse. And that is where, psychedelics do represent some danger, even to a person of sound mind, because if a bicycle, which is the analogy I would honestly make for meditation, is safer and slower than a Lamborghini, you would think. But that's not actually really true. In reality, people probably fall off of bicycles a hell of a lot more than people wreck Lamborghinis. Okay. But you can get on YouTube and you can find the dumbasses that got into a Lamborghini without training on how to drive one, and they drive it straight into a fucking brick wall right away at the first stoplight they get to. Okay. So, you know what I mean? A bicycle is more dangerous and less useful than a Lamborghini until you wreck a Lamborghini going 200 miles an hour. Then you're going to wish you had just taken your bike. Or when you lose control over it, even just at 60 miles an hour and drive it off of a cliff. So what I'm getting at there is that if you do increase your metaphysical metabolism, if you catalyze your conscious evolution without developing the auxiliary or the skills that you're going to need to navigate to control your much faster vehicle, you get yourself in a ton of shit. And especially when you come fucking with the most powerful, the psychedelic that makes LSD look like aspirin. And you're talking about taking it even in small amounts routinely. If you start experiencing telepathy and precognition and you're not meditating and you have not developed the presence of mind to balance skepticism with open-mindedness, if your ego has a tendency to overrule judgment, if you have not mastered selective perception and you have not identified your cognitive bias, gaining access to greater powers of consciousness or normally inaccessible areas of consciousness is like storming heaven and stealing secrets by violence, or you'll find yourself feeling like Einstein when he split the atom, and the energy was just, humanity was not ready for that development. But I have a meeting, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you again very soon. Please hit the like button, share the stuff, subscribe it, support us on Patreon if you can. Come to see us if you like. Thank you, and good night.